In today's lesson, we're going to discuss a very important aspect of Baroque music, especially the early Baroque music, Monadi. We did that last week as well. And you have an assignment of a song that you have to explain whether it is homophonic or polyphonic and name the instruments playing the basso continuo. Now here we see the way that they notated their music in the early Baroque time, and this is an example of the song by Caccini, Amarilli mia bella. Now you have this assignment for the week, assignment 28 in your Cambridge books or scans. At first, music written in the new monodic style was called Le Nuove Musiche, the new music, a name taken from the title of a collection of vocal pieces published in 1602, that's very early, by Giulio Caccini, very early Baroque. We're going to listen to this song, and I also have a recording on Google Classroom of this song from the collection. Now last week we discussed that we have a line for the soloist on top, and that this was not written out. We had the bass line written out for the instrument playing the basso continuo, and that the smaller notes indicated the chords that he wanted to be every note that he wanted, every chord that he wanted there. So everything is there. The figured bass we discussed. So if it's a 6, it's the bass note, and we have a 6 above, but we discussed that last week. So go through it again if you can't remember the basso continuo or the figured bass. So nowadays, if I look at music, it's written out, the accompaniment is written out. In that time, he gave the solo line for the singer and the basso continuo line for the basso continuo. Now, on your form, you have to fill in the instrument playing the basso continuo part in the recording that I have there, and the continuo instrument providing the chords, and whether the texture of the music is homophonic or polyphonic. Now this will help you when you do your assignment. Amarilli mia bella is a solo song, or monody, from Giulio Caccini's Le Nuove Musiche, the new music, a collection of works for solo voice and basso continuo that the composer published at Florence in 1602. Monody, or early 17th century music for a solo singer accompanied only by basso continuo, was a style developed in the 16th century, so that's 1500s. Though the first important published example of solo song date from the first years of the 17th century, 1600s. Needless to say, the development of solo song was a precondition for the birth of opera. So later on we had opera arias, and this is now an early solo song, Monadi. Caccini was born, as far as we know, in Rome, but spent most of his life in service of the Medici. It was a ruling family of Florence. In Florence, he belonged to a group of artists and intellectuals known collectively as the Florentine Camerata. This group of Italian humanists met regularly in the last quarter of the 16th century, developing some remarkable ideas about how a new and more impassioned style of singing might be invented. I want you to listen a few times to the recording, and then you should notice the following features. It's a monody, a song for solo voice with accompaniment by a basso continuo. And don't confuse monody with monophonic texture. Monophonic texture, I have a single line texture that I found in Gregorian chant. The texture of the 17th century monody is a solo song accompanied, so it's actually homophonic. And there you see your one answer. The basso continuo accompaniment is played by a lute on this recording. So I want you to listen to the sound of the lute. And that is, of course, like an early guitar. The lute player is not playing single notes to accompany the singer, even though single notes are all that's written in the score. So we have that bass line that's written out. He's realizing the figured bass, playing extra notes implied by the printed numbers. We just saw that on the music. In the shorthand of the Baroque, no figure above a note means playing the written note and notes 3 and 5. So if I have a note, I play 1, 3, 5. A 6 means playing the written note and the note 6 above the given note. And they omit the 3 here, but it's actually 6-3 because you have to put the 3 with that chord. All the figures in similar ways tell the continue player how to furnish a complete chord. Nowadays, when we play the guitar, we get the chord D or G or G sus, and that's written out, and that also implies 3 different notes. Now here I have the words Amarilli mia bella, non credi o del mio cor dolce desio, desertu l'amor mio. Credilo pur e si ti morta sale, prendi questo mio strale, aprimi il petto e vedrai scritto il cuore, Amarilli è il mio amore. And there I see the meaning, and it says here that I repeat lines 4 to 7. I want you to listen to Amarilli mia bella again, and then you concentrate on the form. The second half of the poem, lines 4 to 6, are repeating, and not surprisingly, the music is repeated as well. Notice how the singer varies this written out repeat, singing notes in addition to those that are written. So he improvises. He adds short groups of notes, embellishments or ornaments at various places, especially before cadences. Now we know that that is a characteristic of Baroque music, that the music is elaborate and we have lots of ornamentation. Listen to the added embellishments. A good singer in the 17th century was expected to be an expert at adorning a melody by adding these improvised notes. In fact, it's amazing how much of this music was made up on the spot, improvised. The continued realization was largely improvised according to the instructions provided by the figures and also by the notes given by the composer. And likewise, they wanted the soloist to also embellish. Unlike later music, his printed score is not an exact blueprint for performance. This week we're also going to look at dynamics. We're going to look at piano and mezzo piano and crescendo and decrescendo. And we will see that this is not marked in. The history of music could almost be seen as an attempt by composers to write down their intentions more and more exactly. As the years passed, moving from the Baroque to the classical to the Romantic, we will see in the music that more and more is written down, and more this writer here feels that in this process we rob the performer of his freedom. And there we will see the way that they wrote the notes in that time. So we don't see crescendos and mezzo pianos, and we see a lot of the same kind of notes, and the embellishments were also not written in. On page 2, we see our work for today and the rest of the week. The earliest opera in 1597. These new ideas were applied to a full-length musical drama, what we call the first opera. Daphne was the first opera based, like many operas for the next 2 centuries, on a Greek legend. The music was by Jacopo Peri, but unfortunately only a few fragments still survive. The first opera to come down to us complete is Irdice, with music by both Peri and Caccini. We've looked at recitative last week, but now we're going to do it a little bit more in detail. Later 17th century composers continued to use recitativo as a means of swiftly telling the story, while giving greater importance to the arias, which portrayed the characters' thoughts and emotions as they were affected by events in the story. There were two kinds of recitativo, secco, dry, supported by only plain chords on the continuo, and stromentato or accompagnato, accompanied, used when a composer felt that the dramatic nature of the words needed to be heightened by a simple orchestral accompaniment. So there I have that the accompaniment is fuller. The orchestra had pieces of its own to play in an opera, and sometimes we also had choruses. While recitative took its rhythm from speech, the aria and choruses often borrowed their rhythms from the dance. The most popular Italian composer at the end of the 17th century was Alessandro Scarlatti. His operas often began with an overture in 3 sections, quick, slow, quick. This plan became known as the Italian overture and is important in that it was the seed from which the classical symphony was to grow later on. So when we do the classical music, we're going to see and study and hear the Italian overture as well. So it's important that you know I've got 3 sections and it's marked quick, slow, quick. Da capo aria. Scarlatti designed the aria in his operas in da capo aria form, that it is in ternary form, A-B-A, but with only the first 2 sections written out. So we have an A and the music stops after the end of section B. The composer wrote da capo, or simply DC, meaning from the beginning. In repeating the first section A, the singer was expected to add his or her own vocal decorations to the printed melody. So A was written out, B was written out, and then you had to repeat A, but with your own embellishments. In France, the leading opera composers were Lully and Rameau. Lully became court musician to Louis XIV, the Sun King. His operas began with a French overture. So that's the other way around, a majestic slow opening with crisp dotted rhythms. Ta, 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 ta. That's a dotted rhythm, leading to a quicker section using imitation. This was sometimes followed by 1 or more dances, or perhaps a repeat of the slow opening section, because Louis XIV loved to dance. French operas usually included ballet, spectacular dance sequences with lavish costumes and scenery in which the king himself often took part. Now, if you go to page 11, you will see a repeat of the recitativo, and you will also see that you have an assignment there. Listen to Baroque recitatives on YouTube and learn the difference between secco and accompagnato. Then the early operas also discussed there. We have the Italian overture, the da capo aria, and there we have another assignment. Listen to da capo arias from the Baroque era on YouTube. So just type in da capo aria and see what you get. And there I have a little bit of the French overture. Let's go through your assignment for the week. You will see work through your Cambridge material and watch the YouTube video. Assignment for the week. Write your answers for the different assignments in the space provided. So you're going to type in your answers there. Assignment 28 of the Cambridge papers. Okay, all the questions they ask you there. Recitative assignment, page 10 of the Cambridge papers, and page 11. Listen to Baroque recitatives on YouTube and study the differences between the 2 types. And then I want you to paste links of 2 examples of each type in the space provided, so that links to YouTube videos that we can watch as well. Explain the following terms: opera, ritornello, da capo aria, Italian overture, and the French overture. So these terms you have to know for this week.